Okay, obviously a slow day around here. So it's good to have you guys here to discuss our season, obviously our future, next year's team and next year's players. And certainly I can talk in generalities when it comes to recruiting, and I'm open to talking about that without getting specific. But, you know, I think it's obvious that, you know, for us, the off season really started March 18th, and the work towards next year really started right away for us, certainly as a coaching staff and our players, turning our attention, our returning players, to what's coming next. And I think, you know, we understand as a coaching staff that some of the challenges that we talked about when we first got the job here, we very well may face a lot of those as we move into next year. I also think while it may be in a lot of ways one of the more challenging years we've had as a coaching staff, I also think it can be one of the more exciting ones, because so many new faces are being added to the program, and a lot of our returning guys are going to be expected to play in you know, increased roles, and that's exciting. And the off-season development is exciting, but there's certainly some challenges. You don't lose who we lost, both in their play and in their leadership, and not expect some challenges. So what all that's going to look like will remain to be seen, but we've obviously got a few months and some potential roster additions in the meantime.
Chris, you know, generally you talked about, you know, the slow days around here. What's the mood been like, just with what's been hypothetically going on with the future of your team, and how much do you think last season plays into, you know, some of the, I don't know, momentum you have going right now?
Well, I do think, I certainly think that our season played a positive role in some of the recruiting momentum that we might be experiencing right now. But you can't just have positive momentum and not put in the daily work that our coaching staff has done an outstanding job doing. So I think those two kind of things go hand in hand. But what I think maybe it's given is some of the, you know, some young people that we're recruiting a vision of what we could potentially look like. And it's, you know, it's been exciting, but you're so much on the grind. Still, this is April has become an extremely busy month for coaches. Extremely busy. You're gone more than the season. You're busier more than the season. The stress level's not quite the same, but it's stressful. Incidentally, I did just see a doctor because I have a patch of hair falling out in the back of my head, and he said it's stress related. So we'll see if that grows back. Don't show it too closely, but yeah, it's been a really busy last month.
When you look at all the stuff that you were able to accomplish last season, and like you said, you lose some pretty significant pieces, what can you take from what you guys did last year that can help with a new roster and a whole bunch of new challenges when you have to replace so much?
Yeah, I think that's when I speak of challenges, that's what I'm talking about. There is what we have to figure out, and some of this is in potentially adding a graduate transfer or two, you know, but a lot of it is how can our returning players listen. The off season's great because as coaches, a goal for me is how can I improve? How can I become a better head coach? How can I improve on the things that I did poorly last year? And you look at that every year as a head coach and a coaching staff, and I'm assessing all of our coaches. Same thing for players. That's what we're asking them to do right now is how can they improve in areas that need to be improved. That's on all of us to do that. And it's imperative that we do, maybe more than any year I've ever coached, because of, I don't know I've had years where you lose a lot in terms of both production, play, and leadership, but the whole combination, I don't know that I've experienced a year where you lose this much. But again, that creates an excitement and an opportunity perhaps for some guys, and I'm anxious to see who steps up.
Chris, looking farther ahead, you kind of now get a chance to shape this team. Watching the tournaments, to oversimplify it, you've got Villanova, spread the floor, shoot threes. Yeah. Michigan does that a little bit. That may be the new way of basketball. How do you want to take this team? What do you want it to look like? Are you a believer in that, or watching Villanova, did that show you anything that you didn't already know?
No, obviously competing against them, you know, you got a good feel for how they do things. You know, they have won in years where they've shot an enormous amount of threes and had 5 guys on the floor that have shot threes, and they've also won last year when they didn't shoot it quite as well. But that's kind of always been their MO. You're right, is spread the floor, and Jay's done that for a number of years, and so has John. And you know, I think it's a trend that we've seen, you know, really in the last 10 years, probably some would say even longer. I think our team, I think today, in today's game, what both of those teams you think of when you see both of those teams is versatility. So they had a 5-man that made threes, and they had a 5-man that could drive long closeouts. You know, Villanova had 5 3-point shooters, and they switched off the ball, on the ball screen action. So I think without getting too much in the weeds or too specific, versatility is what I would say is if you said, hey, what is you want your team to continue to grow and look like as you build it, I want to add as many versatile pieces as possible. As many versatile pieces offensively and defensively as possible. Guys that can play multiple positions. And certainly there's a place for a big, strong 5-man, like we've had great ones here with Greg and Jared and Caleb is growing, but if you see the game now, it's really how versatile can you be, and I think Caleb can grow in his versatility as a player. So can Micah, and that's what the off season is for.
So you buy into where the game is going.
Absolutely, I buy into the idea that having versatility is at a premium. But everybody wants that now. You know, that's the Warriors. That's, you know, LeBron's as much of kind of a Swiss Army knife as anybody ever has been. So I think everybody wants that. I think that's the way. Sometimes, you know, your roster, you know, you have a guy, your roster might take a different shape because there's a guy you can't pass on doesn't have quite those qualities. But if we're going to like put it together exactly how we'd want it, we want as many multi-positional defensive and offensive players as possible. And our 2 best players this year, Keita and Jay Sean, were very much multi-positional defensive and offensive players. And that's what we want to continue to build.
Chris, you knew when you got here that there was going to be depth issues your first couple of years. Have you ever had this busy of an off season when it comes to the recruiting trail, and just what has that been like for you and your staff?
No, I don't. It's always busy, but I don't know that it's been a while maybe that I've felt the kind of pressure that you feel that you have to, you know, I felt pressure to put together, we felt pressure to put together a really good 2000. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. You know, we just felt like, hey, it's really important, 2018, really important class. And we feel really good about those guys coming in, really good. But now we feel pressure. We need to add some one or two older experienced players. And then obviously we need to continue to build moving forward in the 19 and 20 class. So you're always busy. You know, my wife said to me the other day, I've never seen you this, you know, I think she says it every off season though, but she said, I don't know if I've ever seen you this consumed and busy with recruiting in terms of phone calls when you're at home at night, and so it's in the travel. But we expected that.
To have a couple of days like you've had on the recruiting trail, and to see the season you did, if somebody would have told you when you walked off the podium at your introductory press conference you'd be where you are now, would you have believed them? And what does it say about the work that that you and your coaching staff has done?
Yeah, the only reason I would have maybe felt, we really felt like when we got here that just give us some time to begin to build relationships. And, you know, we didn't have a whole lot of that with the 2018 class, the Ohio 2018 class particularly, but we felt like just give us some time. I do feel like I had a lot of faith in Ryan, Mike, and Terry, and how diligent they were going to be in their efforts, and so. I don't, you know, you never know if it's going to look like this, but I did have confidence that our staff could have some success, and we'll see if we can continue to have some success in 19.
For any recruitment, any individual recruitment, like when do you feel comfortable offering a kid? Is it possible to offer too early, or is it a case-by-case basis? Just what's your comfort level, say, offering a freshman, for instance?
Yeah, I don't know if it's too early. I think the biggest thing for us, you know, so much gets made of, you know, kind of this kid comes from there and this kid comes from there, and obviously it's been well documented. We want to recruit inside out, both in our philosophy and in terms of the geography, and Ohio is extremely important to us, as well as this area around the bordering states. But the biggest criteria for us when it comes to offering or not offering, or when we offer, is kind of when do is there mutual interest, and do we feel like he's a Buckeye, potential Buckeye? Do we feel like he fits the criteria? You know, I've said this before, I don't know that it's going to be for everybody. You know, maybe most programs would say that, but I'm not saying it's going to be for everybody, our program, but the ones that we offer and pursue, we feel strongly that they're Buckeyes and they fit us. But I'm not saying it's going to be for everybody. You know, I get hit up all the time about, hey, coach, you got to recruit this guy and that guy, and why aren't you recruiting this guy? And you know, we've tried to be pretty thorough in our vetting process, and if we feel like at an early offer, we've done that and we'll do that with an early offer, we'll do that. If we don't feel like we've known him well enough, we're not going to race to be the first school to offer him. I'm not going to do that.
I guess that's what I was getting at. Like, for an in-state player in particular, Ohio State does not have to be the first program at that kid's door if you haven't done your due diligence yet? That's
not my first priority. That's not my first priority. My first priority is to kind of spend time, get to know the young man, get to know his family, do our research, both academic and how he is, and we're maybe a little more selective in when and how we're throwing out offers.
I think you know what I'm getting at, but I think there has been a sentiment with this program that it has not offered in-state players early enough, and then has fallen behind, and then ultimately loses them. And it seemed like when you guys got here right away, you were offering it, didn't, regardless of the class, as long as the kid fit, you offered freshmen, you offered sophomores, juniors. So did you get any of that when you took the job, that Ohio State was not offering Ohio players early enough?
Maybe a little bit, Bill. Maybe I got that a little bit. Maybe a little bit. But part of me thinks the Ohio thing maybe was a little bit overplayed. You know, Coach Mata had a great run with Ohio players. A great run, and we could rattle off 10 to 15, but I understand that if a guy goes and in some cases maybe doesn't get an offer here and he plays well somewhere else, you know, you're always going to be. I think there was maybe some cases where people, you know, the offer was late or it didn't come in time, they chose somewhere else. So I understand that. But I think a lot of it is coaches. You know, there's so much that goes into recruiting that gets lost. Sometimes people just look in retrospect and say, well, why wasn't this situation well? Sometimes it was maybe a position fit. Maybe there was a guy that was just recruited the class ahead of him. I mean, I don't know all those specific situations. I just know there's a lot that go. Maybe it was an academic concern, or there's a lot that goes into it. The biggest criteria is, do we feel like they are Buckeyes? And then if we do, and we've gotten to know them, we will offer early, and we will be aggressive in our offers. But I'm not gonna sit up here and say we're always going to be the first to offer. It's turned out that that's been the case with some, but we want to get to know them first.
Chris, just about in recruiting, hypothetically, let's say you recruit best kid in the state and you land him. Obviously, we all understand that you build on that in recruiting, but I'm just curious about the process of how you go about doing that, how the pitch changes to a young man that you might also have an eye on, you want to bring in. How does the building process on getting a big recruit lead to other big? Can you explain about how you go about using that to your advantage?
Well, hypothetically, it's just it's a process that requires. I think the process of landing a recruit is whether he's a 20 or 21 or 19, and someone that is certainly sought after. It's a day-by-day process, and it's almost like the game. When you're coaching the game, you just stay with it. Just stay with it. Be true to who we are. Be true to who we feel like this place is, and just stay with it. And then if that happens, potentially that influences others in either classes behind or future classes. I think it really influences if they come and are successful. I think I'm sure Kata's success has helped us for sure, as has Jay Sean's. So I think it doesn't always start a domino effect. I think it certainly can influence, I think our young men in this class, this 2018 class, have done they have influenced some guys in positive ways. We have some charismatic guys across the board with those four, and I think they've done a good job kind of influencing some other guys.
Hey, Coach, I got probably 8-10 different things I could ask you about, but starting with that class 2018, how important will it be with the numbers the way they are that you get Caleb-like contributions as true freshmen out of 2 or 3 or maybe even all 4 of them? I don't know, just what's your thought about that group individually and collectively, I guess?
It's important. I think both. I would say the 2018 class and then the 17 class. And, because we've got some older ones, but we're a little bit, as well, we're thin in numbers with our senior and junior classes, right? So I'm not forgetting those, but those guys got to continue to grow and assume greater roles. Andre Wesson's got to assume a greater role. But there's no question that our 4 freshmen, along with Kyle and Musa, we have to get important stuff from them next year. That's going to be required with, I think obviously everybody knows our situation on the perimeter. So Luther and Dwayne will have a very important role, but so will, certainly potentially, if it gets earned, so will Justin and Jay. But I don't want to forget our other 2 17 guys are going to be really important for next year's team.
Did you signed them in November and then they went and played? Were you guys happy with what you saw out of all 4 of those guys on the high school circuit this past year? Yeah,
we were so busy throughout the year that we didn't get to see them a lot. We didn't get to see them a lot, but we were happy. I think, we have to understand they're going to be freshmen, and we have to temper some expectations for what all those, Kyle was a very sought-after recruit, Kyle Young, as was Musa, and we saw those guys had plenty of ups and downs as freshmen, and Caleb did as well. He had a great year, but he had ups and downs. So I think that's why in a perfect world, you want to get old and stay relatively old. In a perfect world, you just do. You know, but we're not old. That's you know, so but in a perfect world, that's what you want to get old and stay old. You know, you look at like the kid from Villanova, Mikal Bridges. It's a lottery pick. He was a redshirt. He's going to be a lottery pick 3 years later, I think, 3 or 4 years later. Coached against him his redshirt freshman year, and he was just a guy you'd look at and you say, man, how good is he going to be? He's got potential, but how good? But he redshirted, and he probably didn't want a red shirt at the time. He's probably grateful it happened now. I'm not saying that's going to happen for us. I'm just saying there's a process to all this with these guys.
In terms of your schedule, looks like you're playing away game, the CBS thing, probably away game, the ACC thing, away game, et cetera. Do you have a marquee team?
Cincinnati away.
Well, Cincinnati away, yeah, I forgot that one. Do you have a marquee team that you're thinking about that you're lining up to bring in here? And second part of that, they're lowering your ticket prices, it sounds like, a little bit. Is this part of a strategy to get more people back in here, I guess?
Yeah, good question. Not necessarily. I didn't come up with the lowering of the student. You're talking about the student ticket prices?
I don't know. I just saw lowered ticket prices on some students.
Students? Yeah, I think it was just for students. So you'll still have to pay. No, I'm just kidding. It was just for students. But I don't. There wasn't anything beyond that outside of, hey, can we make it a little? It was a good idea, a very good idea. And I think a very good idea. And I literally just kind of saw it as it was being processed through and was like, man, I love that idea. And so that's all that was. We really had growing very good crowds as I think it took a little while. And then what was your, did you have another question?
Do you have anybody lined up
Oh.
that you're thinking about on the hook as a marquee home team?
It will depend on, I think, and I don't have our schedule right in front of me, but I think we're going to be playing either a Big East team at home or maybe an ACC team at home. So it's going to be one of those two, and then the following year is when we have Cincinnati for the opener. But we did not go out because our schedule is loaded as it is. We didn't go out and schedule anyone else.
Chris, you were talking about kind of those guys who can assume that greater level or go to that next level next year. Do you kind of have a guy who's kind of during these early practices, off-season practices, who kind of have assumed that Cater role or JT role or any of those kind of levels of
Have I
leadership?
seen anybody yet? You're saying
kind of step up in that?
We haven't done enough to be able to see it. It's a good question. If you ask me, maybe midsummer or after our new guys get here and after we potentially add another, we need to add another 1 or 2 older players. So, and there may be a question about in terms of our scholarship situation. So let me hit on that first. Obviously, we have one more, and then we've always had a conversation with Joey about, hey, this is a year. We'll take it kind of each year and look at it. That's the conversation I believe that Coach Mata had with him, and then I had that when I got in here. So that's his impact is significant on our team, but he understands that. How that'll all play out, I don't know. We're kind of probably a ways away from really going down that road, but right now we definitely anticipate bringing in one, but it's probably too early. Just haven't seen us enough, and we've got so many new faces coming in that time will tell on that.
Chris, when these kids announce that they're graduate transferring, they don't hide the fact that they want to go play for a program that they think is going to play in the NCAA tournament, because usually they're coming from a situation where they can't.
Yeah.
Even with the success you guys had last year, how much of a battle is that for you right now to convince the guys you're talking to that this program can get to that level again, with all you've lost? Yeah,
I think it's been something we've had to answer to, Bill. We have had to, because they're aware of, and we're not hiding, who we lost. We're pretty transparent, and they look at it, and I think I think there is some questions, and that's not always the number one criteria. But for guys that haven't played in the tournament, it's usually a pretty high criteria for them. But it's something we've had to address, and that we understand that. And we haven't shied away from addressing that and trying to communicate what our vision is. And obviously, in some of these cases, they could be a really important factor in whether or not we can get back to that point, along with the most important factor, which will be our returning guys.
This needs to be said first off. Hair loss is age-related also. Just saying.
They said that to me, yeah. Yeah, he made that clear. Age and stress.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to brag on yourself a little bit. Outside of the program, the success of the program, how do you sell yourself and the coaching staff? What is the appeal to recruits? And I know it's talking about yourself, but it's real and it's part of it.
Yeah. You know, usually when we're in those settings, someone else is doing that. An assistant coach is. But I think what we've tried to sell is, you know, we have our PowerPoints and our slides that highlight me, and you know, someone else steps in and says, hey, let's talk about Coach and his accomplishments in the last few years. But I think more than anything, what we hopefully can communicate to guys right now is that people have enjoyed playing in our system. They have enjoyed playing for this coaching staff, and we've had success. And, you know, we're not trying to sell you on, hey, come here and let's wait and see if we can be successful. There has been an established pattern of success, and that's really what we've hit on. If guys want to, you know, try to compete and play in the NCAA tournament, we can certainly communicate that, and that's really what we've hit on.
This is subjective, but you said they enjoy playing in this system, and with what is it? I mean, what have you heard? What's the feedback? What do they enjoy specifically?
You know, I think our guys have enjoyed the environment that we've created. Environment and atmosphere, and you know, when I say they've enjoyed, you know, you're never going to make 13 players completely happy on your team, but I think they enjoyed the atmosphere. I really seldom use the word culture because I think it's so overused, but I think that they do appreciate that it's typically been a healthy culture. And we definitely communicate those things because they're going to contribute to that one way or the other.
Coach, I was just wondering, what are your overall thoughts on the current recruiting system or process? I mean, Caleb turned out to be a huge help to you guys last year, but I mean, you had no say in his recruiting process, and then you guys signed this incoming class before you even knew what kind of season you were going to have. So, I mean, I don't know if true is the right word, but I'm going to call it the first true Chris Holtmann recruiting class won't come in until after you've already been here for 2 years. Just what do you, and you've talked about not offering kids right away. Just do you think that the recruiting process just moves a little bit too quickly? But just what would you change about the recruiting process, if anything?
I don't know that I'd have any dramatic changes. I think it does. The timeline is different for some guys than other guys. You know, I think that some guys enjoy it to the very end, and some guys are a little more ready to kind of get it over with because they're tired of all that goes into that. No, I do look at, you know, I do look at the 17 and the 18 classes as kind of classes we had a heavy role in outside of Caleb, and I give this 18 class a lot of credit because they came in knowing that, hey, we got to dig in here. We got some work ahead of us in these couple years, and come in knowing that we got to dig in and get some work done. That was nice to see them jump on board knowing that.
Kind of on a cuter note, just how, because I have a puppy myself, just how has having a puppy in your house been? Has that helped contribute to the
It's been awful.
hair loss at all?
It's been 5 miserable days. I mean, this thing. So it's our dog has kennel cough. So we've got to keep him separated from. We've got 2 dogs, 2 boxers, and we have to keep them both separated. So I don't know if anybody has boxers in here, but most dogs, you know, they're friendly and they want to be around people. So my wife had a great idea to make his kind of home right outside our bedroom, our laundry room. Yeah, it's been a miserable 5 days of sleep.
When you look at these the older guys in this team, and you've talked about how important it is for them to develop and take on bigger roles, how important is it to keep everybody here? I mean, the reason you have so few guys is because the program keeps losing guys every year. How important is it that this group appears to be staying together, and you're not going to, aside from losing Kata, you won't lose anybody you weren't expecting?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think keeping them, that's probably atypical, right? You don't expect that necessarily in today's. And I get that. In today's college basketball, it's hard to really expect that. It's a rarity. It's an exception more than the rule. But we're excited about that, and I think it makes sense because I think those guys see opportunity in front of them. It does help with continuity. Listen, I've said it over and over, and everybody knows this. You know, you can't lose the number of guys that we've lost and have a consistent run. You know, at some point, you know, and we hope we don't to a significant degree, but at some point you're going to feel that. So hopefully we can just continue. I just think for us, it's about, can we continue to build kind of brick by brick, and then hopefully get to the point to where we can enjoy a sustained run. That's really our philosophy.
And you've talked throughout the season, we've asked maybe big picture things or off the court things, and you said that's all stuff to deal with kind of when we get to the off season, whether it's engaging with the students or scheduling or things like that. Have you had any opportunity to set any sort of off-season goals aside from getting players better and recruiting? Are there other things relating to the program that you're looking forward to having some time to diving into now?
Yeah, I think, program-wide, we're going to look at everything from how we can maybe improve. You know, I think the ticket issue was a great adjustment. I think game day operations, those are all things program. You know, we're having some facility enhancements that are going to be taking place that will be happening in the next few months. So all those things, program-wide, those are all things that we're going to have our hands in, because I think we as a staff like to have our hands in those things. But our priority right now has been, you know, recruiting and our guys. And we haven't really get into a whole lot of that, although we do have some facility enhancements, you know, full speed ahead.
You've talked a couple times about wanting to bring in 1 or 2 older players. How different is that from recruiting a guy out of high school, and how's that process going for you right now in general?
Yeah, it's a more kind of extreme version of recruiting, smaller timeline, quicker. You know, a guy becomes available and you're flying out to see him the next day once you get his release. Our compliance have done a great job getting the release, but it is, you know, you're at 10 right away on a scale 1 to 10. You are in hot pursuit, and it's very, very competitive, because I don't know that every year we'll recruit a 5th year, but it seems like pretty much everybody in the country is this time of year. So it's really competitive, and I think we're doing okay. You know, we've got a couple visits here in the next week and a half that we're excited about, that probably you guys will hear about, and then we have to continue to line up a couple.
Chris, is it your anticipation that your entire staff will remain intact through next season? I
think so. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but I think the staff will remain in place for the most part. I don't anticipate any changes. We had a couple guys that were approached about jobs, and for one reason or another, it didn't necessarily work out. But you know, as I said, you know, the best way to keep your guys is to lose or lose for an extended period of time. So, you know, I think people are they're gonna come and try to poach our guys, and I want our guys. I mean, listen, I think we have a very talented staff from all the way down the line, from the people we added here to the people we brought over from Butler. I think we have a very talented staff. They help me do my job better. So I think it's only a matter of time before, you know, at some point we lose a guy to a head coaching position.
I know you'll probably address this need when you bring in a grad transfer, but when you look at the roster as currently situated, who besides CJ would you say you're comfortable with handling the ball, playing point guard, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, it could be somebody we bring in. Dwayne and Luther both have the ability to be that. I look at Musa is going to also will handle the ball more and be more of a playmaker, but it's probably going to be more from kind of the wing guard spot. But if you said like who could be your another point guard option, it would probably be Dwayne. But that's also an option we're looking at right now at bringing in, and addressing that need. And it might allow those guys to play. You know, I think there'll certainly be times this year a lot of times where we play a 3-guard lineup. I don't think there's any question about that. We'll definitely play a 3-guard lineup, probably in some ways more than we did this year.
Chris, just something I'm curious about. You've been very open about your gratitude to Thad Matta for establishing the platform that you're building on. But that doesn't mean that you've had time to reach out to him or that he's wanted to you know, put his toe in here. When was the last time you did touch base with him, and how has that been?
Great. Yeah, Thad called me after the season. Yeah, Thad called after the season, and was just really complimentary of the job we had done, and I was complimentary of him recruiting Kata and JT and Cam and those guys and the whole team. But yeah, it was. But he was really complimentary. So that's the last time I talked to him for an extended period.
Obviously, building a relationship with the recruit is important, but when a recruit commits, how important is it to further develop that relationship and maintain that relationship? When he commits,
it's really important. Yeah, your work's certainly not done, and everything from managing, in some cases, their academic progress, which is really important with some guys. That's really important, to just, you know, making them continue to feel our presence and our attention. You know, I think you learn really early on in coaching, in recruiting, you learn really early on that the relationship has to continue to grow. It's got to continue to grow, despite any type of, you know, decision.
In general, are you in the same level of communication, more frequent, less frequent, but less frequent after a commitment? Or?
Yeah, probably as much or more. Yeah, probably as much or more, because, you know, what it does is it streamlines. You know, we're still going to bring in a relatively big class, but it streamlines your recruiting. So now you're not talking to such and such and such as much, because, you know, that's the position that you might have received a commitment from. So it streamlines it a little bit. So now you're throwing all your attention in that with that kid.
Coach, just kind of touching on Bill's earlier question, just when you look at the point guard situation, is it your envision to maybe move CJ back over to the 2 and find a couple of guys that you can slide in there as a true point guard kind of player?
Yeah, maybe, but you know, perhaps, but Musa, Dwayne and Luther are also going to play, you know, some of those spots as well, kind of off the ball. So CJ, I think, grew into the position and did a really good job with it. So I don't know that I'm ready to kind of pull him back from that, because I think he does some good things there. But I do think if we could find another point guard that could come in and do some things, it would help to be able to slide him some and play him like we did Andrew some this year, where we played those two guys together. He did. I think we could. It just depends on who we add with the 5th year, but we definitely could.
From a health standpoint, is everybody good going into the off season? Do you have any procedures or surgeries or anything lined up for anybody?
Yeah, Moose is still dealing with an ankle issue, and he's been out of kind of pickup in skill workouts. But he's been able to do the morning workouts with Coach Q. Our guys have been working out in the mornings, which is always a favorite. Yes, but and he's actually an early riser, so he's one of the ones that's. But everybody else is healthy.
You mentioned you have to keep track of their academics. It just kind of made me think. Have you found that once a guy commits, the academics can drop off a little bit just because they're just your experience?
In some cases, yes. By the way, let me. I forgot. They reminded me. I just want to give our guys a lot of credit. We had 9 that were named student athlete honor roll. Excuse me. Ohio State Scholar Athletes. Thanks, Dan. I'm still getting all the terminology down. But we had 9 of those guys, which is incredible. So, just want to recognize they did a fantastic job, as did Adam Hayden and Scooney Penn and Mike Nettie, who played a role in all their monitoring of their academics. But when it comes to recruits, yeah, a little bit. But in a lot of cases, you know, you're just on them a lot about, hey, listen, finish strong. If you falter in this area or that area, you could be, in some cases, you could be in a danger area. I would probably say half the guys are kind of in that boat, and then there are other half that are, hey, they're going to be fine. Regardless, they're pretty much already qualifiers. But the ones that are in this boat, yeah, you do really have to stay on top of, make sure they're finishing them. That's what we got to continue to do. Okay, thanks, guys.